on this computer. My phone is buzzing. Switch my phone off. Okay. All right. Let's start. So, welcome back to the Fearlessly Curious podcast. And today I have an incredible human being, woman, super dynamic, extremely successful, making big waves around the globe, bringing people together, bringing consciousness and awareness to businesses, to coaches, to entrepreneurs and founders around the world. And through at least my lens of perception, Ozzin is a very young woman who, despite her years of presence on this earth, has literally generations of wisdom that she's bringing forth. So I'm feeling very privileged and extremely honored to have you, Ozzin, on the Fearlessly Curious podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Now, typically people are asked, what do you do? But I'm not going to do that. I want to ask you, why do you do what you do? Over to you, Ozzin.
Wow, thank you so much for this warm welcome. And I'm so excited to be here on the podcast, Melissa. And I love your question. Why do you do? I never had someone asking me that from the get-go. So, I do quite a few things. My main business, again, is the whole consulting where I help people. But again, back to the why. For me, it's about empowering healings and unifying the world. I really think even though I consult a lot of people in business and of course also in their personal journey to align their purpose, I feel that at the core that healings in ourselves is kind of the foundation, that is the cornerstone for everything else that is built upon, whether for the purpose, our calling, and also unifying. I think it's really about bringing people together, and the deeper why of that again goes to healing. And then why healing? Because I feel it's like a place where peace prevails, where you have more happiness, joy, and looking at where the world sometimes is going. I think that's really important. So I think that's roughly summarized the why.
Okay. So it's, from what I understand, it's why you do what you do is focusing on the healing aspect. In a way, it's leaning into what potentially blocks us from our success, the areas in our lives that maybe we're avoiding, or where there's been some level of trauma or difficulty or struggle. And so, wow, it seems to me that you go straight for the Achilles heel, so to speak. Because for many people, they're afraid of healing, right? Because they see that as having to reveal what their weakness is. How would you be open to sharing a little bit of your process with that, with the clients that you work with? Like how do you open that door in a way that makes them feel safe?
Yes. So I like that because, like on Instagram, people know me for a business mentor in the space. So I'm not like positioning myself like specifically as a healer or therapist or anything in that direction. But it's just funny that everything goes kind of back to the healing, even though I do business mentoring. So when someone comes up and says, I want to make like 10K months, I want to make my 6 figures and so on. So like everyone is interested in making that money. But if I would sell them, here's the leadership program, here's the mindset program, here's the trauma release program. There are people who do that, but majority just like wants, their cash, the business mentoring, I need the strategy. So I do sell them, I listen and I hear their vision. That's for me really like very important to understand where they're going and where they at. Especially with the visions. I'm a big fan of that, to stretch the goals like for long-term in years ahead. And then once I know that and I qualify them, it's a good match with me, I get them on board. And then again, on the kickoff call, we do many things. But I would say the whole healing part, it happens during our mentorships, especially in the close like proximity when I work with people that, they have like struggles. Like there are people not taking action. Or another client example I can take is I won't mention name, but he was someone who was struggling a lot with self-love, and also his mom did, and that had an impact that he couldn't make the money. However, in the beginning, I didn't know that. So he had all the same strategy that me and my clients use to make 6-figure months and more. And he did the same, but I felt he was energetically not in that place and the way he was speaking. So a lot of these things were not a match. And then when I asked him deeper questions, how does it feel to do this? Why did you do this specifically in that, situation? And when I feel something is holding back, and then I go deeper and deeper, and then we came to the core, which is I don't feel enough, I don't feel love. And then also his trauma was his mom. So that was an amazing client, because then actually I worked with his mom and with him together, which was really funny. And by the end, but then once that was resolved and he kind of realized deeper healings from also his childhood and also from his mom, it was incredible because he started to make more money. And that was for him a breaking point of big momentum. So that's like one example. And then we have like a lot of people, like, like when they are performing really high, like that's another sort of trauma. So I don't focus on or sell people specifically, I'm going to release your trauma. I'm also neither a full expert in that. However, I just realized I became really good in going very deep with people. So again, I'm not like advising people that's the way, but with the right questions, I realized in hand with business, it's kind of, we cannot exclude that. And it's same thing with life coaching. A good business mentor cannot exclude life coaching completely. Like I do have my focus on what I sell, what I deliver, but to really deliver well, I need to consider the other spectrums as well. And that's what I do.
That sounds incredible. Fully comprehensive, Ozzin. And yes, I love that you brought clarity to that because, yeah, you position yourself very much as a business mentor and coach and consultant. And I do. I mean, not just you, but, we do see this on all the social media platforms, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, even on YouTube. Everybody's pushing, looking for a 10,000 month, looking for a 6-figure deal of 6-figure income, monthly income. And it's a big push on the finance. And to be honest, very few people talk about the danger of hyper-focusing on just the money. I, for one, can claim to that because I had an incredible, I had a 6-figure month in November 2022. I worked super hard for it, was very proud of it. And then I honestly, in the months that followed, I crashed and burned in burnout. And the truth is, nobody talks to people about that. Nobody brings awareness around that. And it sounds to me that you as a business mentor and a coach, you bring a very holistic approach to your clients, which I feel is very important. So folks, those of you listening, I want to highlight this already right now, right? If you're looking to create great wealth, financial wealth for yourself, for your family, for your community, and to leave behind as your legacy, then one of the most important things you need to take care of before the finance is actually your health, because there's no point having a full bank account if you haven't got the health to enjoy it, to distribute it. Sounds to me like Ozzin is your person that you would go to, who is going to support you on all four corners, or I should say holistically in this approach. So you did say that you're not necessarily trained for trauma, but it sounds to me like you're trauma informed. And I loved what you touched upon there earlier about getting to the root cause of why someone might not be earning money, especially since you're providing the wisdom, you're providing the systems from what I see, right? All the expertise, all the sort of practical steps. And yet people are still not making the money. It comes down to what someone's mindset is or sense of worthiness is. Where would you say that your wisdom comes with dealing with such struggles of your clients?
Wow, I think it's a mix of like my own traumas that I had in the past. Of course, they're different than the traumas that my clients face, but I think if we apply certain contextual frameworks that has worked for me, I also can understand through this deeper pain or sufferings people better through deeper empathy levels, but also through different guidelines. And I always say it's important that people evolve their own framework in life, because again, what has worked for me doesn't mean it works for them, but giving people a spectrum of perspectives and then letting them lead themselves and letting them the power to choose what works. I think that's kind of the things that that I feel has worked for me and that I want to provide for others as well. And where my wisdom come from, I think a lot of the wisdom, it comes from experience. It comes from like going through that. And the other part, I always say, like, there's a funny thing I always used to tell my mom when I was younger is I always feel I have a source connection to a library that is infinite of all the knowledge. And sometimes people always assume that I read a lot of books. And for me, that was funny because I do love books. And there was definitely a period of my time where I read a bit more books. But then there was a time I actually stopped and I didn't read many books anymore. And whenever I do courses or programs, people are like, apart from mentors, you read so many books? I'm like, no. And I think for me it's much more dangerous to actually read books and have false knowledge. So that's why I think unlearning things is much more important. That's why I'm very picky with what I absorb and what books I read. And I feel I don't want to be too religious, but I grew up Christian and I'm very connected to God. So for me, connecting to that allowed me to have that wisdom as well. So I cannot quite explain like how that goes, but that's kind of the source for me. And then of course the experiences. And the third point, I would say the wisdom comes from observation. And of course, like yourself, like being a host, of hearing people's story, whether it's through a podcast and things, but being just a good listener and a good observer in life general, a good reader in life, I think that gives a lot of wisdom as well as the ability to receive and give back. So yeah, I think it's a spectrum.
Wow, that's incredible. Giving people a spectrum of perspective. I love the way that you express that. And these 3 points that you touched on, the first one being that, reading books and having knowledge, but knowledge that you can apply is key. And yes, I mean, we can just consume and consume and consume books and have knowledge, but unless you can connect with your deeper knowing, which I interpret, and this is my interpretation, Ozzin. And by the way, this is a Fearlessly Curious podcast. You get to own whatever your perspectives are, because that's why we're here to learn through each other. Thank you for honoring your religious belief, which is being a Christian. And I believe that when we have any level of faith, whatever that faith is, right? In a way, it's a blind faith. And when we have blind faith, we have this implicit trust in a deep knowing that lives within us. And you referred to source. So whatever it is, doesn't matter whether you're Christian, you're Muslim, you're Jewish, you're Hindu, whatever it is, when you have a faith, your knowing lies beyond anything that is tangible. It lies beyond anything that can be proven in a way. And that is such a great power for any leader to have and to hold and to carry forward. So combining the faith, combining the knowledge from reading books, and then giving the space for that knowledge to integrate and then pass that on to your tribe, your community, is extremely powerful. I can see why you are as successful as you are, and that you have the results for your clients and with your clients, Ozzin. Incredible. I'd like to go in a little bit deeper on sort of the adversities that you have had to, I don't want to say overcome, but navigate in your life, and the wisdom that you've harvested from these adversities, that you now bring forward into the work that you do. Because I know that you've mentioned some to me, and I was wondering if you'd be open to sharing a little bit more on this podcast for our listeners.
Yeah, sure. So before I answer that, I just want to add on to the other point in terms of like the religion. Like for me, it was always a sensitive topic to speak that, because I always never liked like how all the religions are so separated, and yet we understand there's a history around that. So my overall religion is, rather than just say this is it, this is just how I grew up, but for me it's really love. As corny it sounds, it's like unifying.
It's not corny. It's not corny at all.
And I really realized all the things we assume is corny is actually the thing that matters the most.
Absolutely.
Most of time in life. So that's what I think. And also like another point that I feel is really important and just flowing to me is, back to the finances, we see a lot in the space that people want their 100K a month, 20K, and we sell them. And there are definitely points, like a lot of people, it's okay when people want that money. And I really encourage them. However, I do make people reflect on because not everyone needs that amount of money for their lifestyle they want. So I realized there are people, they're making like 15K a month, or there are people making 7, 8K a month, and they're so happy. They're living in Bali somewhere, and their expenses are even not that high. So I think it's really important, like, you know, there's a space or a trend that everything is normalized on that. And if people want to go high, I encourage that strongly, and I stretch them, make sure I hold them to that standard. But not everyone wants to do that. So I don't push that if there is no need to, you know, like if there's no desire. So that's kind of what I want to say for the listeners. Reflect on what is important to you, reflect the lifestyle that you want, and how much you think is the point that makes you happy, and then you can grow anytime more. So that's kind of another thing too. But back to the adversities in my life. I think when I started my whole entrepreneurial path, that was the first time, like by the age of 18. But I was still back then in school. I dropped out. I was their freelance artist. So there was a lot of dynamics. And now I'm a business mentor since 2 years. But when we go a little bit back, there's been a lot of hard times as well. So one of the hard times was actually only 2 years ago. That was back then when I was still in debt of 60K. And back then I had to take another loan to actually being able to invest into a mentor. And that was very scary because my family is like not rich. We don't have like extra cash. And I literally had to scratch the things I had together, ask my mom for some of the last money, which was very risky. But I did it because the cost of not moving was expensive, more expensive. So the financial pressure was incredible. And also seeing always my Korean family working really hard for money, trading their time. So there was a lot of crisis pressure, not being able to pay bills and so on back then. And that also affects you mentally. Like when you financially struggle, we sometimes forget how that really impacts your health. You get more anxiety, panic attacks. You cry more. You try to feel and move from a place of abundance. I know that very well, but it's really hard when you see the reality.
Of course.
So that's the thing. And then after that, like, of course, when I was 15, 14, the parents' divorce, other terrible things that happened back then.
Right.
But another thing I think that was for me the hardest adversity that I had to go through was in 2019. And that's something that I just recently shared this year publicly, which was when I was back then kidnapped and raped and I went missing. I was missing in school like for 3 months. And the whole incident happens like 3 times on a row. And I was facing an abusive relationship. And then it led me to being in a court for 3 years, actually, fighting with that guy about the justice and things. That was horrible because I was damaged. I was mentally not good. I had so many consequences from eating disorder, anxiety, panic attacks, not being able to trust guys, and not believe in that anymore. So there was a lot of cries. And I was really at that point, I couldn't open my jaw anymore. I couldn't get out of the bed anymore. And my eyes were hurting so much every day from crying so much. So that was the time I went through that was really dark. But at the same time, there was a part in me that always like kept me going. And that was the part when I was lying on the bed and I could not open my jaw anymore. I started to relate to certain people's pain. Like I never had the thought of suicide, but I could relate from where that comes from. So from that moment, I knew I had to get out. And what got me out was the love towards people and, like the pain. Because if I go through that immense pain, and I know there are daily people who go through that every single day, like that was so unbearable to me and not acceptable. So I told myself I have to get up. And once I'm back, then I'm going to help other people on that as well. So really, after I came back from 3 months not being in school, and I missed out on so many exams because it was during my law studies and economic studies. And when I came back, all the people look at me very weird in the classroom, like what happened to that girl, and rumors were going around the whole school, because everyone did hear about me but didn't know what quite happened. And the school director, my mom, everyone was involved in that case, and they were asking me tons of questions and said I need to go through therapy. I cannot continue school. So that thing made me like, it was a lot of shame, a lot of pressure. But I kept going, and I asked the school director back then if I just can continue the school. I will do all the exams within like 1-2 weeks if it had to. And he said no. And my mom said no. My dad said no. And it felt quite bad because for me, career was always important. I had always my dreams, even back then. But back then, it kind of all crashed down. So for me, I just like I kept asking until the school director said you can stay. You can try to do exams. It's like 30 exams you have to do in like span of 2 weeks. And I did it, and I actually graduated as one of the second best student in school. So that was for me a big thing, and tells me if you want it, like you can make it. And I would say the rest of the story was the big part was the healings, you know, because this healing sometimes, like even though it's now 3 years ago, it's kind of still fresh, but yet it's quite a while ago as well.
It's fresh.
It comes up. And I am now, you know, literally I moved in with my boyfriend. It was just like this weekend, literally like last night. And I've been in this relationship now for 2 years. And I never thought that, because back then I was like, no guys and things. So for me, this whole healing and also the patience, that I'm grateful for my boyfriend, because it comes up again out of the blue. We can have a good time, and then out of the blue I have an anxiety attack, and then I push him away. Sorry, I cannot be with you. I don't see that. And then the independent woman kicks in, and I see that as well with a lot of ambitious women. Like we need to sustain ourselves. We can't trust guys. The guys can come and go, but we have to stand, and all that type of things. It went to one extreme. And I had to work so much on that to release my anxiety things, to do a lot of breath work, to express that. The whole thing of not feeling good enough, the feeling of abandonment, which was from my real dad, which I don't know that happened. So there was multiple things. And I feel through that, I emerged this adversity, like to get through that, the strong resilience. And if I had to summarize this one thing that always kept me going, I think it's really focusing on the love towards humanity, on the people, on my higher vision. And that is the thing that like pulls me more, because for me, crying another 6 months and then doing nothing, like it doesn't serve me. And I always ask this question, does that serve me? So when I cry and feel, I don't like neglect this. I always feel it. And I accept it fast. I forgive myself fast. And then I go back on track, because I know me crying another 2 days probably won't, you know, it wastes my energy. So let's cry today night if I really had to. And the next morning, let's get up and then get back. And that's kind of the attitude I always evolved, like to get up very fast. And the way I can do that is because I accept very fast, and I feel that very fast. I like embrace that fast. So yeah, that's a little bit of the backstory.
My goodness. I want to just take a moment for this, for our listeners, and also for everybody who's watching the video podcast, to just take that all in. That was an immense amount that you've been through, Ozzin. And I will, you know, I just want to just recap that slowly. You know, you were kidnapped, you were sexually assaulted, you know, you were out of action for 3 months. And I think even with my wildest imagination, I cannot imagine how that impacted you. But you mentioned, you know, depression, mentioned not being able to speak or move, and this ability, this resilience that you have to be able to sit with your emotions, you know, honor. That's so important. More and more, we are learning in the world, you know, through amazing people like Gabor Mate, how important, well, first of all, understanding what trauma is and how important it is to recognize that trauma shows up very differently for each of us, for each person out there, but how important it is to find a way to process it. And with God's grace, I will say that, with God's grace, you navigated that. Did you actually did you receive therapy, help through therapy?
Well, after the whole thing, as I mentioned, like everyone was encouraging me that, because they worried so much.
Yes,
and I was in the first place very against that, because I always believed in the power of self-healing. And but I knew, okay, receiving like some help would not be bad, but I had really hard time to receive that.
Sure.
Until I decided, you know what, let's give it a shot. So
Mm.
I actually went the first time to a therapist, but it didn't end up well. I didn't really feel it was helping me. It actually made it worse to me in a sense. And I was personally not clicking well with my
Right.
therapist. And then we changed. So I went to someone else, and there I've learned a bit more. So I've learned from her like techniques and things that would really help me. And that's something I can also teach now to others because I've applied that. But like that's what I've helped. But I would say the majority of the healings, I really see, let's say that 20% is probably speaking to therapists, my friends and my family. But I would say 80% of the healing comes from the choice of me wanting to heal myself and my self-healing. And I think it's a lot through faith, that as well. So for
Mm.
me, I'm a very creative person, and I love to play piano. I love to do music. I love to draw, paint, do this. And I love to go to the nature. So for me, healing took place in a very creative way. And sometimes people think, oh, you need to go to therapy, you must go this. And that kind of like made me aggressive because I said like, it's good, but I almost get aggression if people say you must, and then I start to defend. And I did the work. I'm not a person who avoids that.
Yeah.
So I do confront my realities, but I found my own way. And that's why I encourage other people, like, speaking it out won't hurt you. It's good, but you can choose the people you want to speak to. It's good to have someone professional as well. I do encourage that. But if you don't want to, or let's say you can combine that with your own way, whether you're a person, you like sports, you love music, you love whatever, like, combine it with that way. And when you focus on the future, on the better path, like that's something that really like pulled me out of the dark, like automatically and very effortlessly as well. So
Mm.
it's a
Mm.
process, but that's kind of the things that have really helped me.
That's incredible. And I'm very grateful that you highlight that everybody is different, but you're also encouraging people to get to know themselves because we are all different. Some people will benefit more from having support of therapists, counselors, and coaches as well. These days, many coaches are trauma informed. And so that brings a different kind of energy to the support. But also tapping into the knowing, the inner knowing that we all have, which is the self-healing, nature, going out to nature, like you mentioned, and like play, that creative spirit, like tapping into that creative spirit and doing all the things that, in a way, when we were kids, we were told not to do. Stop playing so much. Stop, play the piano, but you have to do exams. But how about just picking up an instrument and just expressing however it is you're feeling in that moment. So, and I know that's how we connected. We first connected on LinkedIn. We talked so much about music and creativity. And I feel that's something, and I know that's why also you're very inspired to bring more creativity and music into the many things that you're doing. I'm curious, do you know anything about human design, Ozzin?
Yes, I do. I actually had an insight a bit about my own human
Are you a
design.
manifester by any chance?
I'm a generator
Are you
according to the human
you're a
design.
generator? Are you a manifesting generator or pure generator? Do you know?
I'm not sure about that, to be
Oh,
honest.
okay. Okay. No, because I was tickled. And for those of you who are only listening, you need to go watch the video podcast, because then you can see Ozzin and my cheeky expressions. I noticed that when she mentioned she didn't like being told what to do, that under the human design lens is quite typical of a manifestor, a manifesting generator. So when you have a moment, go and check and then let me know another time. Manifestors are pretty much, in the human design lens at least, are like fierce leaders. They're very radical and extremely pioneering. And through my eyes, that's how I see you, Ozzin. I see you as like a trailblazer with a massive vision that's going to do stuff and lead the way in a direction that hasn't been created yet. So you need to watch this space, everyone, if you're listening and watching. You want to get over to Instagram, follow Ozzin, excuse me, and all the other links that they're going to come along with this podcast. You just want to connect with Ozzin because even if you don't, or you're not ready, or you're not in the space to take her on as your business mentor or coach or any of the other offers that you have, just from the content alone, just from her messaging, everything that you put out, Ozzin, is so powerful. It's so inspiring and extremely motivational. You'll always read something that you can take away with you, whether it's a quote, whether it's almost like a mantra. You are so incredibly generous, and you definitely serve from the heart. You transformed your pain into purpose. That's really what I heard when you shared about your adversity. So right now, what is on the horizon for you? What is your biggest vision for 2023? Let's just claim it for this year for now, because I know this is not going to be the first time that I have you on the podcast. So let's just claim it for 2023. What's on the horizon for 2023? What do we really need to look out for?
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for all the words, and I want to give that back as well. And I think it's so beautiful that we, our paths crossed, and I really believe that we are all creators, through phase, through the universe, whatever people want to call that. But I think we are all meant to create and being this artist as well. And in terms of like my vision for 2023 specifically, I'm actually working on my book. So that's for me, and it's called Marry Yourself. And it really talks about all my healings and all the things, but specifically for the people out there, even like in the business space, that builds a foundation. Because as I mentioned, I really realized in my journey, and I see that with other people, the more you actually own yourself, the more money you make, the better relationship you have, and also the better you heal yourself, and the better you heal you treat your body as a temple. And I always used to have this quote of your network is your net worth, and then I change it to your network is about building your relationships and your ability to determine that. And now I change it to your network is your self-worth, or your self-worth is your network. And that's like the core of the things, like to take inventory of your gifts and things. That's allowed
Sorry,
me.
Ozzin, can I just pause you for 1 minute? I want to take that in. I want everybody to take that into. Your self-worth is your net work or net worth?
Could be both.
Could be both.
Probably
So your
both.
self-worth, I want to hear you say it, because it's got to come from the vibration of your voice.
Sure, your self-worth is your net worth, and probably exceeds your net worth if you have a great network and you are good with people. I think it exceeds that amount. But what my message is, it comes down to your self-worthiness. And I think it's easy to say that because you hear from people, you have to own yourself. You have to just go and take the inventory. Like, you hear that. And again, here on the podcast, you hear that. But what that means for me, I translated it into a different language. And it was about the concept of marry yourself. And it's not just in a way of, there are people and there are words out there of that could sound egoistic. What do you mean marry yourself? Should I marry myself? How does that work? And I always say it doesn't matter if you're a guy, if you're a woman, if you think it's selfish or not selfish. The point is the same. Even as a guy, for example, like if you want a better body, if you want to attract your dream women, you also do the work of marry yourself. You can call it whatever you want. You can also call it peanuts and butter. But the thing is, it's not about the words there.
Yeah.
It's about the context you put it, and you work on yourself. And for women as well, the healing, it's not the traumas that you make you stronger. It's the choice that you daily make to heal that makes you stronger. So you were strong before your traumas and all of that. And that's what I want to realize people when they actually marry themselves, because once you do that on a deeper level, it means you marry the world, you marry your neighbors, and then you cannot hate but only love to people. And when you reach that level, like you I don't know, you can be really anything.
You're unstoppable. You're unstoppable.
You're really unstoppable because you lead with love, and love always wins.
I love that concept of marry yourself. It definitely resonates with me through the song, my first release that I came out with the first song release I had in 10 years, and it's called The One. And because I'll explain to you why it resonates. We live in a world where we're taught to be so hyper focused on the external world. We're taught to constantly look for validation. First of all, we're told, look for the one to complete you, find a relationship and find that person. People refer to my other half, which by default suggests that if you're looking for that person to complete you, or you say you introduce your husband or wife or partner as, oh, my other half, that means without them, you're only half. Without them, you're incomplete. I mean, how awful, really, right, Ozzin? So what you're saying is be whole, come to realize that you're whole and complete within yourself first. Marry yourself first. Then you go out in the world full of love, recognizing, self-validating this abundance of love you already are, and then you send that energy, that frequency out so that you then attract love as well. You give it in order to receive it, or you receive it and you give it. It's like this infinite relationship between the two. And when I wrote the one, it says, I wrote it for that very similar reason, which is as a reminder that it goes like this: you are the one, the light of the universe. You bring hope when there's none. And basically, it's like you are the answers to your questions. You are the solution to your problems. You are the healing for your own wound. And I can understand why you were like, no, I don't want to see any therapist. I want to do this myself. I want to do this myself. Right? Earlier on, you're like, I don't like being told what to do. And it's finding the balance in that. It's recognizing only you can walk your path. Only you can do, and in air quotes, the work. It doesn't mean that we can't look and receive support from therapists, from counselors, from mentors and coaches like you. But I know you don't do the work for your clients. You're there to accompany them, right? You're there to remind them of their gift, of their unique frequency, and for them to get curious of how they can live the fullest potential of who they are. It's been such a pleasure having you on the podcast, and we're not done yet. We're not done yet.
Melissa, can I add something to the last point you
Please,
mentioned?
of course.
So in terms of like what you mentioned, like, okay, my client, like I don't do the work for my clients, but they do themselves. I think that is very important, especially in the coaching and consulting industry, or any space, because I see a lot of coaches, they kind of like, they do this babying with their clients, and also their marketing is like attracting babies. And what that was for me very a big eye opener, because it's like when a coach says their marketing, did you fail with your last, coach and it didn't work out? I'm here for you, 24/7 chat and support. Come to me. We guarantee this and this. And then, but the language is like really like babying, baby, who hurt you? Don't cry. Mommy will be here for you. Come to Ozzin Jun, auntie, and then I will, walk with you the path. So it sounds really like that. And I really realized, like, of course, every business has a different model and offer.
Sure.
But the language, it matters so much, because I wanted to work with self-led leaders, with visionaries. And I realized that was for me the most powerful thing, because it's like the choice of power is still on your side. The work is still on your side. And if a mentor or a coach is training or setting me up of, like kind of spoiling me in a way of like, they do the work for me and I cannot make choices, that's the thing. And I need to ask. I've learned to ask better questions. I learned to ask with better context. I've learned to let myself, because it's very different to work with self-led leaders and action takers versus people. They are very like, they give you a lot of headache, and they're like really babies. They need you at all points. So it's also the stages of entrepreneurship. Are they just starting out? Are they already making certain amounts? Are they longer in the space? I don't say an aspiring entrepreneur is, like not, like self-led, because there are also new people who are pretty self-led. But again, it's the tonality. And I think, again, it comes down to good leadership in life in general, but also in business as well. That matters so much. And then the type of people, you want to work, to be conscious about the words as well.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Tonality is everything. Messaging is one thing and tonality is the other. I will, however, say that I'm a big proponent of encouraging and propagating more of a feminine. And when I say feminine, I don't mean woman-centric. I mean feminine in terms of energy. So a nurturing approach to business, because I do believe that hustle culture, it's passe. Like that does not work anymore. And especially after, the whole world pandemic that we've gone through, the issue of mental health and emotional wellness is finally getting the attention it deserves. Having said that, in the corporate world, it's still very much about ticking boxes, but we cannot function as silos anymore. We cannot function, whether it's in corporations, whether you're a founder in business, even within our communities, being afraid to speak our truth, and most importantly, being afraid to ask for support. So I totally get what you mean by not propagating this kind of, let me come and rescue you. So it's kind of like saving, the poor victim. I'm the coach, I'm going to come and be your hero and save you. On the other hand, it's important to find that balance where we can let people in our community know that when they need the support, they can ask for help, that I am going to be there for you to ask for support, not for me to do it for you, but maybe do it with you, maybe guide you, maybe accompany you, maybe cheer you, maybe support you in that way, nurture you. I do feel that that's a very important new balance that the world needs, especially in business, because of the mental health issue. But thank you for bringing light to that. I really want to ask you, in this journey of yours, it's been, let me see, it's been powerful, it's been profound, it's been extreme, right? You've gone from extreme adversity, and also very young, you were still at school, you were in college, you were studying, all this was happening, right? Then you came out of school, you were in debt, you took huge risks to take a loan. And then you mentioned about seeing your Korean family trade time for money. If you're open to it, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about your roots, like the culture and the roots that you came from, and how it's been navigating that as a modern, contemporary woman of a Korean culture origin, so to speak, and now making your way out in the world. Could you share a little bit about that? And also who your greatest mentors are, like personal mentors are, that maybe you could give a shout out.
Okay, sure, absolutely. So the first thing in terms of my roots, so for those who don't know, I was born in South Korea, but by the age of 6, I moved to Switzerland and ever since grew up here. So that's kind of the context and background. Okay. But I've always been visiting like Korea for like vacations with family. So I saw that also. There was a part of my childhood where I grew up there, and I saw my grandmother working. Like she always had like her own restaurant and noodle shop in Korea, which was one of the best. She's really good in her town, one of the best chefs. But she worked incredibly hard and she did it like nonstop. Every time I see her, she's only sweating and working, sweating and working. And of course, grannies want the best for us. They want to give us a lot of food when we come and make us presents. But it's like just the principle of she trading her time for money and her rest. And she also comes from a different generation. So my mom's generation, her generation is of course different. So they didn't have maybe the same ability like now with, Zoom calls, being an online coach, and the circumstances were different. The timing was different. So you need to consider that. But it hurt me sometimes when I see generally my uncle, auntie, everyone working so hard for that and then surviving. And then part of the family who was also in debt for other reasons and they couldn't get out of it. And then my mom, she's been also struggling a lot with her health as well. And then years before where I almost lost her. So it was really hard on the health side of things. And at the same time, it was the pressure of I need to work because I need to feed my daughters, because I need to do that. And there was a lot of this survival mode. And again, the work hustle culture to survive. And when I see this growing up, like when I was 6, 7, I saw my mom crying a lot since we arrived in Switzerland. And back then as a child, I never understood why my mom cried. And as I grew up, I started to understand the things better and grasp what is going on in the adult world, why my granny is sometimes, working so hard and things. And that is when I realized I want to change that. So that's why actually after my apprenticeship at this young age, between 16, 17, 18, I took a lot of notes of that, of what I see, of what I feel about the world, what is the gap, what's the biggest world problem. So I was already interested in those things when I was 14, 15. And I started to make a whole analysis about the world, starvation, climate change, things, mom. And I told myself when I was 14, one day I'm going to go to the United Nations and I'm going to meet the president and I'm going to provide them the solutions for these things and lead that on. So for me, that was already on board. And that's crazy because in 2022, I actually got invited from the United Nations. And
My God.
paper that I was from when I was 14 years old to them. And the only update was me being a bit more adult, you know, like in terms of my thinking. So
Yeah.
I had to update my sketches when I was 14 to where I'm at right now, 24. And I presented them and they're like, wow, this is, you know, this is exactly what the United Nations does and some of the organizations out there. And then I could speak that out. But again, from the whole roots, what I see is, especially the Korean culture and nation, there are so many hardworking people. Generally in Asia, the pressure is high performance is high.
Yeah.
People expect you to go to the best universities. That's why suicidal rate also in Japan is high and other countries. And for me, seeing that like that was not the past, and I'm sure that for that reason I was probably planted in Switzerland. I think it's really a big luck because Switzerland is one of the freest country in terms of democracy, politics, and expressions. And I feel like me growing up with those both cultures, it affected my mentality. So I'm not quite original Korean in terms of very traditional thinking of like I must have the certification, the best university grades, and like only like, you know, hardworking and paper stuff. But Switzerland, European, Western is a lot of pragmatic styles. It's a lot of about experience. Western America, it's a lot free. You know, you're way you express in Switzerland, you get trained for debates in Switzerland. So it's very different. And me having the mix of both and navigating what's good in that culture, what's good in that culture, I can like pull out one thing a bit more in certain situations. So that helped. But again, when I go to traveling to Korea, like last year, and I have conversations with people, you know, who are 20, 30 years old, like around my age or mom's age, wow, it's very exhausting. It drains you a lot of energy because these people, they don't even know what coaching is. They don't know what mentorship is. They don't even get it that I'm 24 and running, you know, a business and doing those things. They consider me as a baby there, you know, and they don't get it and they don't take me seriously. My mom also used to tell me money is the root of all evils, you know, like me sharing on social media about how much I make. Like for my mom, she's like, don't do this, it's dangerous, don't do that. My friends already asked me, you know, your daughter is very, you know, open. You know, like that should be discreet, that should be private. And then I had to brainwash my mom and my family.
You had to retrain her. You coach them. I love it. You coach them.
So I trained my own mom many hours, literally 4 or 5 hours, like blabbering her full, asking her questions, mom, this belief. And now she's different. Now she's like, yes, we need to make a lot of money. I was like, yes, we will be in abundance. And she changed that. And because she changed, she's changing her mom as well.
Wonderful.
So it's like me being a coach, I feel like it had an effect on that. So I think that that was
healing.
a lot of awareness.
Intergenerational healing. That's what you're doing, right? Healing the line before you. How incredible, Ozzin. Your mom and your grandma must be so incredibly proud of you.
Yes, they are.
Yeah. I mean, even in the short time that I've known you, and I've known you online, you know, we met through LinkedIn and we got on a call, and it's definitely been over a year. And I've probably seen you 3 or 4 times online. I can safely say you look different from when I first met you online. You look brighter. I think when I first met you, even though things were good, when I compare it, you might have been maybe really working hard to make your business successful. Now I see you smile more and joke more. I don't know. Are things very different from maybe 18 months ago? 18 years ago, you were 6. Okay. No, we're not going there. 18 months ago. How has life changed for you in the last 18 months?
Oh my God, it changed everything. Literally everything. Like, I don't know like where to start because 18 months ago, I was literally like, I was, you know, back then, because I tried other businesses as well before coaching, you know, that's why the debts, by the way. There are some of the debts with scams, some of the debts like through businesses that I didn't work out. So for me, like going from almost 0 or still surviving to making my first 6 figures. And then most importantly, because when I made them 6 figures, I actually dropped. And that's the thing many people go through. You hit your 6 figures and then you drop to 0 or whatever. It's because you're not setting it, because it's like scale set. And most people scale and then down, scale and then down. And it's because the foundation systems are unplayed. And I had to learn this in a very hard way. So for me, that has changed to to know yes, you can go with speed and you can come with quality, but also there needs to be a fine balance where you need to set these things sustainably. So that, like, doing that and solving that issue, that made me a lot happier, definitely. Another thing is, and that's something very important I want to share, even back then when I was saying like I don't have the money, I would call myself I'm broke, but I felt there was never a point where I was like truly broke, because even in the times when I didn't have money, it's really funny, people always thought I make a lot of money. They perceive me as, she's always, like happy, bright. And that was even the time when I had like 60 cents on my bank account. I couldn't even afford a coffee. And I went down with my friends. I was like, shit, I cannot even pay my coffee. And the friend said, like, I'm going to invite you. I was like, oh, God, you invited me, But it was really the pressure, like going to restaurants and looking at the meals, like, shit, I cannot afford that. And the pressure. But at the same time, it's a beautiful place at the same time to be. And that's what I want to say for people who are financially up there. It's like, yes, there's a certain confrontation if you want to change that, to accept it, to be aware of that. But also it really allows you to be closer to faith. It draws you back towards the core of life, the little things, like when you go out and drink and sip your coffee, or you're with your loved ones, and you realize even when you make your 6-7 figures, that things doesn't change. So for me, it's still the same things: spending with my boyfriend time, going with my family, and then having a good barbecue or going out for a walk. Like that pressure, like that bliss in that moment is still the same. So that's why I feel like happiness wise, that has been always there for me, this light. But of course, if we looked at the things, how they really changed, like me taking care better of myself, my health, that took really a long time. And sometimes I still struggle because it's a process, but I improved a lot. More money because self-worthiness, healing. Me finishing all this court stuff and this bullshit from 2019, abusive relationship, that was a big one. Me 2 years ago, I didn't even have my boyfriend, so that was also a funny thing. I was still in the mindset of no boyfriend, no problem, get all the guys out there. It was like my mindset. I was like, focus on money and your career, like boyfriend or career, like easy career. And then I literally met him, this guy, out of the blue, and that was really funny. And it was like love at first sight. And then from there on, everything evolved. Like we met on the first day, we fell in love on the first day, and then we were together on the first day. And that's how things happened. And that comes from a girl who had actually lost the faith in that type of things after what I've been through. And that's why relationship, it reflects, it's like a mirror, it reflects all your insecurities and things, so which it did to me. So there was a lot of cries behind the scenes in this 18 months in my relationship life, in my healings, especially not because this guy is not good, but because he encouraged me to heal. And I've never received a true love. You don't know what true love is until you experience that. And many people in abusive relationship, they perceive the thing as true love, which is not true love. So you need to know what is not in order to know what it is, that is good. So that's the thing that happened. And of course, that's probably the reason why I even bloom up more. So I feel like the flower has always been there. I've been always like happy and things, even during that hard time and cheering people on. People couldn't tell quite, but it takes it to different levels because now I can give more back as well. And also the expressions come out because I've been always an introvert. I've been always shy. When I was 14, I didn't feel confident in speaking. And then really it took me only like 3, 4, or 5 years later down the road. And now I love public speaking. I'm like speaking on stages, hosting my podcasts, doing these things. I feel like that's part has been repressed in me. The part of being that serious business mentor that has been repressed. Now I'm just like bold, edgy, funny. I don't care. It's like with you, it's like take it or leave it. And with guys as well, take it or leave it. This is my standard. This is what I want. And so on. So I'm like this. And for some reason, when I do that, people love me more. And that's kind of what this is like kind of the controversial thing. It always happens when you kind of just do your things, like people come. That's the same with guys, like when you're so focused on your career and your freaking passions, it's like every guy comes there and wants to knock there. So it's like just focus on your mission and your passion, what makes you happy. And when you radiate the sun, it's like everyone wants to get that sun or the sunlight of that.
You are a force. My goodness, folks. Take a breath, because I feel like this podcast has been this episode has been so incredibly powerful because Ozzin's presence, whether you're simply listening, whether you're on the video podcast, is palpable. So you definitely want to watch this space. I'm going to say it again. You want to follow Ozzin. I knew that from the moment that we connected on LinkedIn, I knew that we would stay connected. And it's been over a year. I was very, very lucky to be invited to be on Ozzin's podcast, and now she's on here. I just feel incredibly lucky to be able to share you with my little community, Ozzin. And I'm very excited for all the people who get to work with you, who have worked with you, who get to work with you. And I'm excited to see everything that's going to be coming through, what you're bringing, this light that you're bringing into the world. You have such incredible wisdom to offer, but more importantly, the inspiration that you give people by being you. And now that you're sharing more of your journey as well, you know, because you said you weren't ready for a while, understandably, because you've walked such deep adversity. That's just going to take everything to a whole different level. So thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for all the services that you provide as a business mentor, as a life coach, as a consultant, as a speaker, and just as a friend to so many people I know, right? To everything that you do for your family. You know, what you mentioned right there about, you know, how people have a perception of you. I just wanted to share this little anecdote. I had something similar very recently, just yesterday. My mom was telling me how someone had said that, that were talking about me and saying, oh, Melissa's always traveling and always on holiday. And I just thought that's so funny, because what I've done is I've built a life that allows me to travel. But because I've built a life that allows me to travel, it means that when I'm traveling, I'm also working, right? You and I, we don't work 9-to-5 jobs where we can be like, okay, I'm taking 4 weeks off, no work. Maybe you do, I don't know, but I don't. I've built a life where I want to be able to get on a plane when I can, or get on a bus, or get on a train, or on a boat anytime I want. I'm not anchored because of my work. But what it does mean is that when I do travel, I have to work when I travel. But the perception is interesting. And that's why, as you mentioned, it is so important to hyper focus on your own life purpose, your own mission, whether you call that career, whether you call that your business, whether you call that your project or your dream. You need to focus on your mission, because you're going to be distracted by what other people think, what other people's interpretations, other people's opinions. But like Ozzin, folks listening, she knows what she wants. She knows what she needs. And so do you. Everybody listening, you actually know when you quieten the noise of other people's opinions and center within yourself, and then find, if that's what you need, the right counselor or the right coach, whether it's business, whether it's life, whether it's a community, whether it's a mentor, then, and still staying hyper-focused on your mission, the success is inevitable for you, as is proven by Ozzin in such a short space of time. So, I mean, the world is the world ready for you, Ozzin? I don't know if they're ready for you.
Born ready.
Born ready. Born ready.
I think that, you know, this word ready, I think it's so funny because, you know, there's a lot of things I felt in my life. I was always at the edge of doing something. And we all know that when you feel like you're not quite ready, but kind of ready, it's like you want to, but kind of you hold back.
Yeah.
And that's why I have my life motto around jump in at the deep end, which for me has worked always so well and has actually transformed my life. So every time I felt scary to speak in front of people, I knew the thing I had to do is to speak in front of people. So whenever I was in a situation like that in classroom, and I was very scared, you know, back then the teachers told me Ozzy never speaks. And that was always a conversation between my parents and my teachers. She never speaks. She never asks questions. Can she talk? And now I'm the biggest talker, you know. So funny. And that's why in such a situation I always like raise my hands. And the same thing with business, it feels kind of scary, but I feel like it's a thing that calls me, so I just jump. And then when you dive into that ocean, you go to the great unknown, and it gets dark, it gets scary. You don't know in the ocean what's in there. But when you swim, you actually discover the ocean is so beautiful there. You see a lot of other creatures and fishes who are like-minded with you, who support the journey with you. And when you go even slightly deeper, and then you go back up, you see big light, you see enlightenment in the ocean. And I think that's the great thing that expands there as well. too. And another thing that I also want to thank my journey to is, of course, my mom, you know, my parents. Like, I cannot like exclude that, because I wouldn't honestly be here without her. There were times where I also had, of course, like disagreements, because sometimes entrepreneurship is tough. Parents are, you know, not against it, but they worry about you. Friends are worrying about you. There's a lot of negativity, and I always had to defend myself, defend my ideas, defend my vision, protect that. That's why I'm like freaking stubborn on that part. But at the same time, it was really necessary, you know, it was really necessary to receive the help of my mom. And it was really hard to receive, for example, certain amounts of money from my mom, asking for things when you feel like you're, you know, like they're not in the position either. However, because of that, I wanted to ask, because my mom was not in a position, we needed to change. So to do that, I was like, instead of, you know, investing into stock and bonds, mom, invest into Ozzin Jun. I'm your greatest asset. I'm going to make things rock. And also another thing for the people who don't have such parents, because that's also not for everyone, unfortunately, the case. I also want to tell them the thing, like everything that you feel like you need, a lot of things you can also give it to yourself. I had a big trauma around, I need confirmation from my mom of how good I was. When I made my first 10K, I wanted to hear from my mom, daughter, you did such a well job. And a lot of in Asian countries, it's like very underdog. You're like, oh, you have a, you know, A grade, like you're really good. Ah, okay. And so on. Like, it's normal.
Yeah.
You made 10K. Oh, cool. Can you close the door, please? You know, like, you know, especially my mom.
Go and cut me the onion in the kitchen.
Yes.
Yes, well done on your 10K. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, and then it's like you're like, woo, and you want to share the news, and then you go to mom, and mom is like not interested, and it goes all down. Mom, I did this and this. She's like, oh, cool. Yeah, because I was interested in billboards. Oh, really? Okay. Oh, okay. You know, and this, like, it hurts. And that's why I was saying, you know, deep down, I know she's really proud, especially like a lot of Asian people, they brag about their children as well. However, all of that things I've learned to always like give the thing I'm seeking for to myself. If I want to get congratulated, I congratulate myself. I know I did a great job. You did your 10K. I started my podcast, and that changed my life, honestly. And to be around that fishes or these people who also congratulate you, you know, you always have this friend circle, these 2-3 people in your life are very hyped. They're like, woo, and they over celebrate you. And that's the type of people I feel like is really good for you. And also the people who expect you to be your best version now. Not like people who are saying, wow, one day, Melissa, you will be this. One day, Melissa, you're going to make that amount of money. But how many people do we have around your surrounding that expects from you this now? Ozzin, I expect from you, you're a millionaire now. Not because like, you know, it's like an unhealthy entitlement, but it's like, I see that in you, you know, like it's now. And I think having such people who give you that borrowed belief is the powerful gift in giving the borrowed belief to others, but especially the borrowed belief in the name of presence, not the borrowed belief like in 1 year or 2 years. It's like now. You're healthy now, and I see that healthy version in you right now. I acknowledge the fact. So that type of thing helped me a lot, and I want to honor all the people, friends, family, parents on my path on this throughout that journey.
Incredible borrowed belief. I mean, again, listen, folks listening, watching the video podcast, I'm going to say to you right now, this episode is one that it's a keeper. I mean, they're all good, obviously, but this one is particularly special. You want to save this. You want to listen to this back, watch it back again. But this time you want to have your notebook and your pen, because Ozzin has literally dropped a trail of golden nuggets here, an entire trail of them. So save this, share it with your friends. Ozzin is incredibly inspirational. We want to be a support. Like she just mentioned, it's so important for us to really look at who is in our inner circle. They say you're the average. Jim Rohn said you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So make sure you've got that person who is your cheerleader, who's your greatest cheerleader. Make sure you've got that person who's going to represent that borrowed belief where they say, hey, listen, I expect that from you now, not tomorrow, right now, because I see it in you right now. You want to have somebody who is your accountability partner, who's going to call you out lovingly, no doubt, but call you out when you are less than what you can be, who's also going to call you out when you're over pushing, who's going to call you out to say, hey, you need to take that break. You need to give yourself what you're giving others, because that's another thing. People who are very passionate and who are passion and purpose driven have a tendency to overgive. I know you've been there too, Ozzin, right? And it's so important for us to have someone who says, hey, wait a minute, you know, it's great what you're doing. But like you said, are you giving any of this to yourself? You got to give some, because we can't pour from an empty cup. So follow Ozzin, save this episode, get a notebook, write down all this wisdom she's giving, get her on Instagram, on LinkedIn, get her on her podcast. Can you just share with everybody the name of your podcast, Ozzin?
Sure. So my podcast name is Inspiration Science. It's on behalf of my Instagram account called Your Universal Way, which is also my media company. So when you want access to that, just go my personal profile on Instagram and you will find the links. And if not, you can just directly type in on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Inspiration Science, or just type in my name, Ozzin Jun, and you will see the things listed. And I talk there really all things the holistic success, which is the health area, the relationship area, the business, and we do specifically focus on the mental health journey, the purpose part and things, but I do include also business, because many people, they connect their purpose to their business, and again, holistic. That's why you see a whole spectrum of me bringing artists. Also Melissa was on there, had an incredible conversation, so you can tune in to listen to our conversation as well. And yeah, and hit me up also if you have an incredible story to share to the world, because I'm also open to always receive new guests on my show to interview them as well.
Amazing. Ozzin, it's been an absolute pleasure. I want to round off with 3 fun questions now. Okay. Are you ready for the fun questions? Okay, here we go.
First.
Pineapples on pizza, yes or no?
Yes.
No!
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to review our friendship now. Oh God. Okay, so she's a yes for pineapples on pizza. I'm a no. Okay. Now, fries in ketchup or tomato sauce, or fries in ice cream?
Oh, well, definitely ketchup.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we're friends. We're friends. Okay. One more. Are you a fan of Marmite?
What is that?
Do you know? Okay, you don't know what Marmite is. Okay, we'll have to find another question now. Okay, well, la, 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 la. Okay, never mind. I can't find another question. I'm just going to ask you this. I actually asked you this before. So final question. If you were a song, what song would you be?
Oh, the song. Wow, I would say, wow, I had like a bunch of titles from Marry Yourself, Jump In at the Deep End, Be Bold, Be, you know, like just do it. It's very simple, but I feel like it's the powerful lines that goes through me.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's like be bold, like really, like it's very short. It's like be bold.
Okay. So
bold towards your happiness. Like that's the thing I would say, because it kind of summarizes the rest of that.
okay. You're picking song names that you would release. I'm referring to songs that are out at the moment, like currently. What do you listen to? Yeah, like what if you were a song that was out there? What song would you be? You share yours and then I'll share mine.
Yes. Wow. Let me think there, because there are some songs I love their melody, and other song I love their lyrics more. There is one I think from Sia, is like this Courage to Change, which I really like.
Sia, Courage to Change.
Courage to Change. That's the thing.
Okay.
There is also another song, but I forgot the title. Like, you know, because we told you about, you know, I told you this, that there are some songs that reminds you on your own success, the success songs, this hyped up songs. I forgot the title about that, but let's stick to Sia. I think that
okay.
Really
Sia, Courage to Change. Okay, folks, go listen to that, and we can help Sia with her royalties. That's fine. Mine is for today, because normally daily it changes, but for today, and actually it's been pretty consistent since 2016. I feel like my key theme song of my life is "Adventure of a Lifetime" by Coldplay.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, Ozzin, thank you again. It's been it's always so much fun talking to you. It really, really is. I'm truly, truly inspired by you. And I really admire your wisdom and your resilience and your drive and passion. I personally am very, very inspired by you. So I look forward to more playful collaborations in the future. We talked about that offline, which I won't talk about now. And I wish you every success, because I know when you're successful, you have an entire community with you who is successful. So thank you again, Ozzin.
Thank you as well, Melissa. For me, it's been also a pleasure. It's always fun to speak to you, and I love our bond. I think it's also what draws us together in terms of creativity, funny, the whole humor in life, and the adventure. You know, I feel like it's a lot of woo. You know, this mood of woo, like I want to jump. It's like this type of mood. While there is something grounded in us that goes a bit deeper than woohoo, you know, the superficial of laughters. And I like the contrast of that. So also thank you so much. And for all the listeners, keep going. And if you don't have yet the belief of someone, then give it to yourself and then still attract this type of people who support you on that. I think that is really important, that you're not alone.
All right. Thank you. And for listeners, remember what you need to do. Until next week, stay fearlessly curious. All right. Oh my God, that was